Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week, on our Against the Odds poll, we had an early Modern Masters 2017 poll. I think we're going to have another one this week since we have the whole set now, but we had some cards from the first couple days of spoilers, and in the end, it was a well-known horrible enchantment by the name of Seance that came out on top. So this week, we are heading to Modern to play a deck that's looking to generate some value from the graveyard with the help of Seance. A couple of quick things before we get to the deck. First off, if you want to vote in the Against the Odds poll, follow the link in the description of the video. There's an article link. It'll take you to the article. There's a poll there. So that's where you can vote. Also, if you haven't already, it would be super helpful of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk 4-color Seance in Modern. And interesting story about this one. So I've mentioned before that when it comes to Against the Odds, I almost exclusively build the decks by myself. However, once it became clear that Seance was going to win the poll, I got a message on Twitter from Zach Elsick, who apparently has been playing Seance for a long time. If you don't know Zach, he popularized the Lantern Control deck, kind of known for some interesting brews, but he had some ideas, so I talked to him a bit. He shared some ideas with me. In the end, I ended up changing up some things, but there was definitely a lot of his influence and suggestions that ended up in the final build of this deck. So big thanks to him for talking about it. Anyway, Seance. Seance is a 4-mana enchantment, and basically what it does is at the beginning of each upkeep, you exile a creature from your graveyard, and that's it. It goes away at your end step. It seems really bad for a couple of reasons, mostly because the creature doesn't have haste or anything, so it just kind of sits there. So the way to actually abuse Seance is kind of the tricky part. And my initial idea was, well, we can play like Hornet Queens to make a bunch of tokens, Craterhoof Behemoth to finish the game, and maybe the biggest thing I got from Zach in talking to him about this deck was you don't really need a big finisher. Seance by itself, as crazy as it sounds, is good enough to just win games. So what we ended up with was a deck that has Seance, and it has some ways to find the Seance. So Satyr Wayfinder is super key. It enters the battlefield, gets us land, hopefully, gets some cards in our graveyard. That's pre-Seance. Post-Seance, Satyr Wayfinder is one of our best cards to immediately get back because it keeps stocking our graveyard. We get more Satyr Wayfinders, our other creatures, so it just makes sure our graveyard is always full for Seance value. Commune with the Gods finds our Seance because it can hit a creature or an enchantment and also fills our graveyard. The downside is we can't get it back with Seance because it's not a creature, but it's still really good at helping us find our Seance and get the value started, because once we get the Seance down, that's when we have this incredible value engine that allows us to take over the game. So how do we actually win with Seance? Well, one of the tricks is to play cards that put themselves in the graveyard and also do something when they enter the battlefield or when they leave the battlefield. So Muldrifter, for example, is 3 mana to evoke, which means when we cast it, it's going to go to the graveyard. We draw a couple cards, so it's like a divination, and then since it puts itself in the graveyard, we can get it back with Seance, draw some more cards, generate a ton of value like that. Shriekmaw is the same thing, but Doomblade essentially, or Terror. Play it for 2 mana. Kill a creature, goes to the graveyard, Seance it back, kill another creature. Lots of value there. And then Fulminator Mage is awesome against Tron and Eldrazi and Scapeshift, any of these slower land-based decks, because it's just so much land destruction. We play it, sack it to kill land, get it back with Seance, kill another land, and just kind of grind our opponent out of the game. The other way we generate value with our Seance is Eternal Witness, which is super awesome. So in theory, Eternal Witness can get back lots of things, and one of the aspects of Seance is once the card is exiled with Seance, it's gone. It's in the exile zone, we can't use it again, so Eternal Witness can kind of get around that. Let's say we have a Fulminator Mage in our graveyard, we really want to use it multiple times, we can Eternal Witness it back to our hand, cast it, use it to destroy a land, and then Seance it back, so we get an extra use out of all of those creatures before they get seanced away. However, probably the most common use of Eternal Witness is to get extra value out of our spells, so we can Path the Delver in the early game, Thoughtseize a combo piece in the early game, then we can Eternal Witness back our Path or our Thoughtseize, use it again, and then eventually we Seance back our Eternal Witness, we can get our Path or Thoughtseize another time, and we're kind of drawing these cards way more often than you'd think, because Satyr Wayfinder, Commune with the Gods, is putting them in our graveyard, so it's kind of almost drawing us cards when we have these Eternal Witnesses that we can keep looping back thanks to Seance. Wrath of God also just gets rid of everything, and it works well in our deck because we get our stuff back with Seance anyway, so even though all of our creatures are dying too, we kind of naturally break the symmetry just because of Seance and the power of getting stuff back. The last part of the plan is enter the battlefield stuff. So these are cards that don't necessarily get themselves in the graveyard to come back with Seance, but they get milled with Wayfinders and Commune with Gods, but they generate value when they enter the battlefield, and then as they die in the natural course of the game to removal and in combat, we can Seance them back and get even more value. So Wall draws us a card, Kitchen Finks gains us some life, good roadblock against aggro, and then Siege Rhino is actually usually our finisher in this deck. We cast it, get some triggers, it'll die, we Seance it back, get another drain trigger. Sometimes we just grind out a little bit of damage in the early game with our random creatures and Satyr Wayfinders, and then in the late game we have our graveyard full of all of our stuff, and we just like Eternal Witness, back a Siege Rhino, cast a Siege Rhino, Seance, back a Siege Rhino, drain some more, and just drain our opponent out of the game 3 damage at a time with Siege Rhino. The last couple cards in our deck allow us to reuse our Enter the Battlefield triggers. So, Restoration Angel lets us blink a Wall of Omens, blink a Siege Rhino, get another trigger there, blink a Eternal Witness, get something else back from our graveyard. We can also Seance it back and blink something, so lots of interesting value there. And then Doubling Season, since the creatures from Seance are tokens, is kind of like a powered up Panharmonicon in this deck. We get back an Eternal Witness. Not only do we get the one from Seance, but we get another copy of that thanks to Doubling Season, doubling up our tokens, so we get 2 cards back from our graveyard, or double Fulminator Mage to kill 2 lands, double Siege Rhino for double triggers. So a lot of times it works like a Panharmonicon, although it's slightly better because like Fulminator Mage doesn't really interact with Panharmonicon, but double Fulminator Mage off Doubling Season is actually pretty sweet. In the mana base, tons of fetch lands, a bunch of shock lands to fetch up. We are 4 colors, so we gotta make do with the fetch for shock mana base, then some basic lands, and as far as special lands, we get some Horizon Canopies, which is a good way to generate value in this deck. We can sack it to draw a card, get it back with Eternal Witness, sack it to draw a card, Seance back our Eternal Witness, get back our Horizon Canopy, draw a card. A lot of value there. Tech Edge can kind of help the Fulminator plan. We kill a land, get it back with Ewit, kill another land. It deals with even more non-basic lands, helps us be good against Tron and Escape Shift and those type of decks. In the sideboard, we get some more copies of things in the main deck. So Shriekmaw, so good against like Eldrazi and decks like that, when we 2 mana, kill a Reality Smasher, get back Shriekmaw, kill a Thought-Knot Seer. Kitchen Finks for aggro decks, just a good roadblock. Comes in, gains us some life, blocks 2 times. Fulminator Mage for those matchups I was talking about, Tron, Escape Shift, Eldrazi decks, where we can kind of just land destruction them out of the game with the help of Seance and Eternal Witness. Also good against control decks with Celestial Colonnades that want a lot of mana. Reclamation Sage comes in to fight against things like Rest in Peace, which are pretty good against our Seance. One of the nice things about our deck is we can win without Seance. We can't just like play Satyr Wayfinder into a Kitchen Finks, into a Siege Rhino, kill something with Shriekmaw, maybe blink a Siege Rhino, and kind of win that way, draw some cards with our Mulldrifters and so forth. But Reclamation Sage helps make sure that our Seance plan is going to work even after our opponent brings in Graveyard Hate out of their sideboard. Then we have a bunch more removal, Fatal Push and Path for early game creature decks, Wrath of God to sweep away everything, Sundering Growth deals with an artifact or enchantment. It's pretty sweet because it has Populate, and Populate does work with our Seance cards. If we get a token back, we can kill an artifact or enchantment, copy the token, and that token's going to stick around and not get exiled. And then we just have a couple of hate cards, Surgical Extraction for graveyards, and Stony Silence for like Affinity, Tron, anything with lots of artifacts, eggs, etc. So that is 4-color Seance, and that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. So I'm really excited for this one. This looks like a pretty reasonable deck. We'll see how Seance actually is. I think we can win some games because we have like some decent cards. We can draw some cards. We got Muldrifter, which makes me all excited. Fulminator Mage. We have a lot of like different plans going on, but it seems like we have answers for a lot of different things if we get our cards in the right order. And hopefully the fact that we have Commune with the Gods and Satyr Wayfinder and Muldrifters to draw cards will mean that we find the pieces that we need. Like main deck Fulminator means we can beat the big mana decks and control decks. Main deck Kitchen Finks means we can deal with aggro decks, and we have early game blockers like Wall of Omens. Then we have good big creatures like Siege Rhino and Shriekmaw to deal with like Eldrazi and kind of mid-range decks. So it feels like we got a lot of bases covered, but we'll see how it actually works. Anyway, that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon.